The Lost City of the Sun. The Rise and Fall of Cahokia. Long before European explorers set foot in North America, before the names Columbus or Cortez meant anything to anyone, there was a city. A great city. A city so vast, so ambitious, so alive with the pulse of tens of thousands of people that it would not be matched in size on this continent until the rise of Philadelphia nearly 700 years later. This was Cahokia. It rose from the fertile floodplains where the Missouri, the Illinois, and the mighty Mississippi rivers converge, a place the ancient inhabitants called the American Bottom. Today, that land lies just east of St. Louis, Missouri, in the state of Illinois. But in the year 1000 AD, it was the beating heart of the most sophisticated civilization north of Mexico. So who were the Cahokians? They were part of a broader cultural world archaeologists call the Mississippian culture, a network of agricultural communities that flourished across the American Southeast and Midwest. But Cahokia was different. Cahokia was the apex, the pinnacle, the place where everything the Mississippian world could imagine it actually built. The story begins quietly, around 800 AD, when small groups of people began settling the floodplains in greater numbers. The land was generous. The soil, enriched by centuries of river flooding, was extraordinarily fertile. The rivers teemed with fish. The forests offered deer, turkey, and abundant timber. People came, and they stayed. Then, around 1050 AD, something remarkable happened. Something that archaeologists still puzzle over and debate with the intensity of a mystery not fully solved. In what seems like the span of a single generation, perhaps less, Cahokia exploded. The population surged. Construction began on a scale that would have seemed impossible just decades before. It was as if someone had pressed a great accelerator, and the city lurched suddenly, dramatically, into existence. At its peak, between roughly 1050 and 1200 AD, Cahokia was home to somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 people within the city proper, with perhaps another 10 to 20,000 living in the surrounding communities and villages that stretched across the floodplain. This made it, by any measure, a genuine metropolis, the largest city in pre-Columbian North America north of the great civilizations of Mesoamerica. And at the center of it all stood the mounds. Oh, the mounds. To stand at the base of Monk's Mound today is to feel something shift in your understanding of this continent's past. Monk's Mound is the largest pre-Columbian earthwork in the Americas. It rises in 4 great terraces to a height of about 30 meters, roughly 100 feet, and its base covers more ground than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was built entirely by human hands, basket by basket, load by load, over the course of generations. At its summit stood a great wooden building, perhaps 50 meters long, where the city's paramount chief, a figure of immense political and likely divine authority, lived and ruled. Around Monk's Mound spread a grand plaza, deliberately flattened and maintained, where the city's ceremonial and political life played out in full public view. And around that plaza stood more mounds, over 100 of them in total, scattered across the landscape in a carefully planned arrangement. Some were flat-topped platforms where temples and elite residences sat. Others were conical burial mounds, the resting places of the powerful and the honored dead. The city was encircled by a massive wooden stockade, a defensive wall made of some 20,000 logs, constructed and reconstructed multiple times. Inside and outside its boundaries, a grid of neighborhoods spread outward, densely packed with homes and public spaces. But Cahokia was not merely a city of dirt and wood, it was a city of ideas. The Cahokians practiced a religion centered on the cosmos, on the sky, the sun, the movements of the stars, and the eternal rhythms of life, death, and renewal. Evidence suggests they believed their chief was a living embodiment of a great supernatural figure, sometimes called the Birdman in modern scholarship, a powerful deity associated with the sky and with falcons. Images of this being appear throughout Cahokian art, engraved on copper, carved in stone, painted on ceramics. Falcon warriors, winged men, figures that bridge the human and the divine. Their ceremonial life was elaborate and, at times, chilling. Archaeologists excavating a site called Mound 72, a modest ridgetop burial mound, uncovered evidence that stopped them cold. Beneath the earth lay the burial of an important man, laid upon a bed of 20,000 shell beads arranged in the shape of a falcon. Around him and beneath him lay other burials, hundreds of them. Many appeared to be young women, buried in mass graves, showing signs that they may have been sacrificed to honor the great man's passage into death. It was a window into a world of immense power and immense darkness. Trade was the lifeblood of Cahokia's economy and influence. The city sat at the crossroads of the continent's great river highways, and it used those highways masterfully. Cahokian traders and emissaries traveled enormous distances. Copper came from the Great Lakes region, over 1,000 miles to the north. Marine shells arrived from the Gulf Coast, equally far to the south. Exotic stones, feathers, pigments, all of it flowed into Cahokia, and Cahokian ideas, symbols, and perhaps missionaries flowed back out. The Mississippian culture, with its flat-topped mounds and its complex cosmology, spread across much of the eastern half of North America, and many archaeologists believe Cahokia was the engine driving that spread. Then there is Woodhenge. On the western edge of the central precinct, the Cahokians erected a series of large circles made of massive red cedar posts. Archaeologists have found evidence of at least 5 of these circles, constructed and rebuilt over generations. They functioned, it seems, as solar calendars, ways of tracking the rising sun on the solstices and equinoxes, aligning the city's ceremonial life with the great cycles of the cosmos. On the morning of the spring equinox, standing at the center of the circle, a person would have watched the sun rise directly over the peak of Monk's Mound. The city itself was oriented to the sky. This was a civilization that understood its place in the universe, or believed it did, and built everything around that understanding. But nothing lasts forever, and Cahokia's greatness was mortal. By 1200 AD, cracks were beginning to show. The population may have strained the land's resources. Forests around the city had been cleared for agriculture and timber, leading to erosion and flooding. Evidence from lake sediments nearby suggests the climate was shifting. Droughts, floods, or unpredictable harvests may have stressed a food system that depended on maize agriculture at a massive scale. There are signs, too, of social tension. The stockade wall was expanded and reinforced, suggesting fears of violence, whether from outside raiders or from unrest within the city itself. The grand vision that had unified the city in its explosive founding moment may have fractured as different factions, different neighborhoods, different leaders competed for power. By 1300 AD, the city was a shadow of itself. The population had dropped dramatically. The great building projects had stopped. People were leaving, filtering away into the wider landscape, perhaps returning to smaller communities, perhaps establishing new settlements farther afield, carrying with them memories of the great city they had known. By 1400 AD, Cahokia was essentially abandoned. The mounds still stood, silent and overgrown. The plazas had gone to grass. The stockade had rotted back into the earth. The people who had built all of this, who had dreamed it, labored for it, worshipped within it, were gone. We do not know exactly why. The honest answer is that we probably never will know completely. The Cahokians left no written language. The records of their civilization live in the earth itself, in the soil layers of the mounds, in the burned remains of buildings, in the bones of the dead, in the seeds of the crops they grew. Archaeologists have been reading those records with extraordinary care and skill, but a city this complex, this human, will always hold its deepest secrets close. The descendants of the Cahokians are almost certainly among the native peoples of the American Southeast and Midwest today. The Osage, the Quapaw, the Chickasaw, the Muskogee, and others. Their oral traditions, their spiritual practices, their relationship to the land all carry traces, however transformed by centuries of history, of what once flourished at the confluence of those great rivers. When European explorers began pushing into the Mississippi Valley in the 1600s and 1700s, they found the mounds, but not the people who made them. They invented stories that the mounds were built by a lost race, by the Welsh, by the ancient Israelites, by anyone other than the Native Americans who had actually built them. It was a comfortable lie for a colonial imagination that needed the land to have no history worth honoring. But the truth is far more magnificent than any of those fictions. What rose here, in the American bottom, over 1,000 years ago, was a genuine civilization. A civilization with a cosmology and a calendar, with artists who worked copper and stone into images of breathtaking power, with architects who moved millions of cubic feet of earth with nothing but human muscle and wooden tools, with a ruling class that commanded the loyalty and fear of tens of thousands of people, with traders whose networks spanned a continent. Cahokia was not a footnote. It was not a curiosity. It was one of the great cities of the medieval world, contemporary with the building of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, with the Song dynasty in China, with the height of the Islamic Golden Age. While all of that was happening across the oceans, here, in the heart of North America, a people were building something extraordinary. They built it from the earth. They built it toward the sky. And though they are gone, the mounds they raised remain, patient, enduring, and still, after all this time, asking us to look up and pay attention.